Thanks so much, Jim, and thanks, Max. That was amazing. So I'm going to read a couple of, I have a new book coming out in November, and I'm just going to read a couple of kind of blog posts from it. It's a mix of poetry, blog posts, and prose, and it's about the hospital basically that I was based in for 25 years. So that's going to be the first thing I read. It's going to be pretty short, 2 blog posts. So I'll start with that. This mic is weird. Can it go down a little?
You need a mower?
Yeah, like it's like, yeah, that's much, much better. Okay, perfect.
Oh, sorry.
Can you hear me now? Good. Okay. The Santeria Princess, 1984. Crossing in front of the ambulance is a woman dressed entirely in white, a Santeria princess walking among us. On 9th Avenue is a small store filled with candles, room spray, and statues. All the magic is here in Hell's Kitchen, baking in the summer heat. How did we know she was a Santeria princess? Somehow, all these facts and legends from the neighborhood permeated the hospital. Everyone knew about Santeria, about the long-haired derelict who was a DEA agent gone bad, about the Westies keeping disembodied hands in their freezers. In a 5th-floor walk-up apartment, a man collapses on the worn rug, barely breathing. A candle flickers on the altar. The only bright spot in the room, St. Barbara's face, illuminated by flame, stark as the lightning that struck her pagan father dead. Part of trying to capture a time in my writing is trying to sink back into the soup of givens that made up the world then. I guess you would call it common knowledge, except of course common knowledge is always restricted to one culture in one time, so it's not common at all. O St. Barbara, protect me from the miserable people who lurk in the shadows seeking to harm me. O Virgin Saint of Revenge, I know we must pray often against a sudden and unprovided death. O Chango, God of lightning, of war and drums and lust, I know we must bathe often in roses and cinnamon. There used to be a Santeria store run by Rastas a block from my apartment. They had candles and room spray and all, but if you went to the back and stood in front of a mirror, a drawer popped out and hit you in the stomach. If you dropped 20 bucks in and closed it, it would pop back out with a bag of pot in it. How did the entire East Village know to do that? Watch now the flames behind your eyes, lit by your servant who dies on the floor beside your feet. 2 medics kneel beside him, trying to wrest him from your hands. The odds. As I'm working on revising and cutting today, I keep wondering, what's actually interesting? Does anyone care that my partner Errol at Met used to have dreams in 1981 that guided us when we played the numbers? Now that there are no numbers and hardly anyone remembers Ching Chow. In the year of our Lord, 1927, an inscrutable cartoon entitled Ching Chow appeared in the New York Daily News. We never actually hit, but we always came close. That was what kept us going. Some of the other guys at Met used Ching Chow, but they didn't have any better luck than us. I remember someone teaching me how to do it one night. It had to do with counting the horizontal lines. For 63 years, Ching Chow's elliptical captions graced those pages. If you knew what to look for, if you had the knack, you could predict the outcome of the daily numbers game. We'd get the first two, then the rest of the shift, we'd talk about what we were going to buy with our loot. Now that there's legal lottery games, no one plays the numbers. Is it interesting that we did? That it was so woven into life in the 80s, no one even thought about it? At some point, everyone who played the numbers will be dead. Then will people want to know the details? Or will it just be like vacuum cleaner bags, like, who cares? Thanks. And now I'm going to read something that's actually I wrote a while back that has nothing to do with the ambulance. It's called Tientos and Black Holes. It's February 18, 2003, and I'm sitting in my apartment, listening to the bang of the radiator, looking out my window at the snow. It blows and swirls, piling up on the fire escape, the pots and the bird feeder. All the birds are gone today. The world is gray and white, so quiet it could easily be 90 years ago. 1913, the year that the gypsy singer Manuel Torre toured Malaga as the world balanced on the edge of the First Great War. Now we're on the edge of a third one, and which way we'll fall, I don't know. But I'm listening to music, Manuel Torre's voice wavering from the cheap speakers of my computer. He went mute at the end of his life from a badly managed case of aphonia, a disease I've never heard of, even though I've been a medic for years. The word translates roughly as without sound. He sings to me through the static of someone's old 78, transferred to CD. Even the scratches have been transformed into binary numbers. He sounds like he's praying, as if he knows his great gift will leave this world before he will, and with it his heart. The intervals are ancient and mournful. A guitar scrapes behind him, far from the microphone. I don't speak much Spanish, so I can only understand a few words. Heart, God, lost. I'll never know any more about Manuel Torre than I do now, only less as he drifts further and further into the past. For most of human history, the past must have been like an enormous black hole, a place that each lifetime intersected and from which nothing could ever escape. But then, scraps of writing began to emerge, words worn and battered from their journey through 100 languages, coming to us with most of the writer's soul worn away, but still present somehow, like a fossil traced faintly in shale. Now we have photographs, recordings, movies. I can hear the voice of Manuel Torre more clearly than most of his contemporaries did. He never left Spain and wasn't well known outside of his native land. But what do I hear? A voice that never changes, never breaks or rises in any other way than what it did in that one moment, on that one day, many years before I was born. I've been reading a lot about physics lately, the kind of science books with bright covers written for teenagers and poets. This is how I discovered that the Russians have another name for black holes. They call them frozen stars, not frozen in the sense of temperature, but frozen like photographs, places where time has ceased to pass. A black hole isn't an actual hole. It has no physical edge, only a boundary called the event horizon, where its mass curves space-time so extremely that light can no longer escape. And that's the point where time stops. You can't see inside a black hole. You can't even see something go into it. For an observer in the universe watching, an object passing into a black hole would appear frozen on the event horizon, caught in the last posture that it held in time. Depending on whose book you read, it would either remain there forever or very quickly begin to fade. But everyone agrees that if you were inside the falling object, you would experience something very different from what the observer saw. In the instant that you crossed the event horizon, all of time would have passed in the universe outside. So, if the hole were big enough, and if you were able to see out, the world's future flashing before you would be the only way you would know that you had entered something you could never leave. This is because inside a freely falling object, the laws of physics remain constant, unchanging. Here are the facts I know about Manuel Torre. He was an illiterate gypsy who loved women, greyhounds, and fighting cockerels. He rode a donkey to his performances. He had several children with his daughter-in-law. He was born in Jerez and died of TB in Sevilla. At the time of his death, he was so poor a friend had to pay his hospital bills. Another covered the cost of his funerals. And that was his life. Manuel Torre, the flamenco singer who Lorca claimed broke the shine off the mirrors. He looks out at me from a scruffy photograph on the cover of the CD. His hat a strange amalgam of derby and top hat, forever tilted slightly to the right. I wonder if he worried about the Great War, and later, what effect Franco and the fascists had on him. Was he afraid? Did he fear for his family? For Lorca, who would be executed in the olive groves only 3 years after his own death? Or was he caught in a small world, falling through a larger one, unable to see the changes outside his own life? Sometimes I believe that all worlds are falling. My life falls through what I perceive as time. My planet falls through space-time, which is warped by the mass of the sun, which falls through the bumpy Milky Way, which falls around a black hole, from which my galaxy may have been formed. And my galaxy falls, and maybe my universe is one of many, falling and swirling through something I can't begin to fathom. I think about this as I listen to one of the tientos. From what I can decipher, it's a song about the mountains, a small house, and sugarcane and time and sand. The title means touches. He must have sung the song 1,000 times in his life, each time slightly different. But only this version survived, a glimpse of the dark soul of perhaps the greatest flamenco singer who ever lived, frozen on the rim of the past. It's much easier to travel into the future than into the past. All you need is a rocket traveling close to the speed of light, or a stick to edge letters into clay, or a microphone in an old tape deck. I hear the voice of Manuel Torre, but he'll never hear mine, singing from beyond the grave. I wish I could say to him, look, it all doesn't matter in the eons that make up this world, to spend a year or two without a voice, hospital bills printed on paper that crumbles, a funeral caught in minds that will be dust before your century is done, because you've launched your soul into the future where all the sadness in this world can never touch it. Faruka begins to play, and for a moment, I'm not sitting here in my New York apartment with my computer and my can of soda, wondering if this spring will bring more destruction to the city that I love. I'm caught inside a song, falling with Manuel Torre, in a world where a shepherdess weeps on a mountaintop, lemon trees and olives flower, and there's a place to rest, high up, if you only climb long enough. Thank you. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. Thank you, Maggie. Thanks to Maggie Dubris, beautiful reading. Max Glad, all the people at the Open, thank you so much. What a night of poetry we had, and some pretty good comedy too. So thank you, everybody. Have a drink. Oh, and we have books.